Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into some truly extraordinary source material, detailing the rise, the rule, and the ultimate ruin of 13th century India's only female sultan. We're going to unpack a really powerful historical critique of medieval gender roles in political authority, tracking one woman's life as a constant uphill battle against internal conspiracies. So I want you to imagine something for a second. Imagine stepping into a completely cutthroat political chess match where your absolute biggest disqualification is simply your gender. The sources we're exploring today outline a strict, deeply traditional world where the very idea of a woman holding political authority was essentially considered an offense to the natural order. And yet, one woman picked up a sword and completely shattered the political equations of an entire empire.
Section 1. A world ruled by men. The 13th century Sultanate.
To really understand her struggle, we first have to set the board in the Delhi Sultanate. This was an era where women were expected to operate solely from the background, often using men as channels of power. Direct political authority itself was strictly a male domain. And the crucial obstacle here, the invisible wall she was up against, was the Turkan-e-Chahalgani. Sultan Iltutmish, who truly established the administration, created this homogenous group of 40 elite Turkish nobles to manage the empire. They wielded immense power and honestly possessed incredibly fragile egos to match. They firmly believed that taking orders from a woman was a fate much worse than death. As we'll see, they are the ultimate architects of the relentless internal conspiracies in this story.
Now, this brings us to a massive thematic juxtaposition for the era. Sultan Iltutmish was actually incredibly broad-minded. When his most capable son died in battle, the Sultan looked at his remaining sons and saw nothing but incompetence, just men totally drowning in luxury and wealth. So he made the radical, unprecedented choice to bypass traditional succession laws purely on the basis of merit. He nominated his highly trained, politically astute daughter, Razia, asserting that she was quite literally more capable than all of her brothers combined.
Section 2. The Stolen Throne. Betrayal and Succession. Of course, traditional court expectations weren't just going to let a woman walk up and take the crown without a fight. Tracing the years here, you can see how things quickly spiraled into a massive succession crisis, which sparked an all-out battle for legitimacy. We go from Iltutmish taking power in 1210 to the tragic death of his heir in 1229, right up to the critical year of 1236. The moment the Sultan died, his dying wish to have Razia succeed him was completely ignored by the nobility, and that launched a chaotic 4-year period of rebellion, sheer survival, and relentless conspiracy that would ultimately end in 1240. You really kind of have to feel for Razia here. Despite her undeniable merit, the Turkish nobility proved they would much rather be ruled by a completely incompetent man than a highly capable woman. Her stepmother, Shah Turkan, actually bought off the group of 40 to install her own son, a highly unpopular puppet named Ruknuddin Firoz. Shah Turkan then quickly unleashed a reign of terror, blinding and executing rival heirs, which included Razia's own brother. With an assassin's sword quite literally hanging over her head, Razia was forced into a desperate corner.
Section 3. The People's Sultan. A direct appeal.
But here's the thing, Razia was politically brilliant. She decided to just entirely bypass the entrenched male nobility. She figured, hey, if the court won't give me legitimacy, I'll demand it directly from the streets. And what is truly fascinating about this moment is the sheer courage it took to pull this off. Right after Friday prayers, Razia stood on the roof of the Grand Mosque and addressed the masses directly. She reminded them of her father's wish and just asked for a chance to prove her capability. The famous medieval traveler Ibn Battuta noted that her speech was so powerful, so emphatic, that the public practically launched a revolution right then and there to hand her the throne. The public absolutely answered her call. In 1236, she finally claimed her father's throne. She completely bypassed the political opposition and the religious clerics, asserting her newfound power by striking coins under her bold new title, Razia al-Din. Now, striking coins, that was the ultimate mic drop of 13th century politics. It was the absolute highest historical indicator of sovereign legitimacy. For a brief shining moment, she had completely triumphed over traditional court expectations.
Section 4. Defying court expectations. Ruling without a veil.
Once she was actually in power, Razia didn't just sit quietly. She systematically dismantled traditional 13th century gender expectations. She wasn't going to be some shadow ruler hidden away in a palace.
Think about how she presented herself. She stepped completely out of harem politics, removed her veil, wore traditional male armor, and personally led massive military campaigns. But her boldest and honestly most dangerous move against the Turkan-e-Chahalgani was appointing non-Turks to high-ranking positions. The most famous example of this was Jamaluddin Yakut, an Abyssinian. For the traditional nobility, this disruption of their monopoly was the absolute final straw. She delivered swift justice, she was highly intelligent, and she commanded undeniable military strength. Yet, as the sources explicitly point out, to the Turkan-e-Chahalgani, her biology was literally an unforgivable offense. Her biggest disqualification was simply being a woman. It didn't matter how perfectly she ruled or how prosperous the kingdom became, these elite men simply refused to take orders from a woman, setting the stage for total betrayal.
Section 5. The Chain of Rebellions. The Conspiracy Unfolds. Realizing she wasn't going to be their puppet, the nobility shifts gears into a full-blown, active political thriller-style conspiracy. They knew they had to get her out of the fortress of Delhi to actually defeat her. This step-by-step destruction was incredibly calculated. They couldn't attack her governance, right? Because she was actually exceptional at it. So, they assassinated her social image instead. They spread vicious rumors about her relationship with Yakut to ruin her public standing. Then, they launched a coordinated chain of rebellions across the empire to stretch her military completely thin, all while secretly plotting to install her brother, Barm Shah, as their brand new puppet. The sources tell us that the second she left Delhi to crush the rebellion of a governor named Altunia in Bathinda, boom, the trap snapped shut. The conspirators struck with ruthless speed. In the chaos of the ambush, her loyalist Yakut was murdered, Razia was captured, and the group of 40 seized the capital, crowning Baron Shah as the new sultan. Section 6. Fall of the First Woman. The Final Chess Move. So she's trapped in a fortress, right? But she is not defeated. She engineered one last, absolutely desperate chess move to reclaim her empire. She never once gave up her fight to reassert her power, demonstrating just incredible political acumen. She looked at the very man holding her prisoner, Altunia, and flipped him from a captor into a formidable ally through a strategic marriage alliance. By merging their forces, they marched right back toward Delhi to confront the conspirators and take back her stolen throne. Tragically, though, the source texts reveal it was internal treason, which is really the overarching theme of this entire conspiracy, that ultimately brought her down, not a lack of leadership. Out on the battlefield, her own forces abandoned her. A massive faction of her army committed treason and crossed over to enemy lines. Outnumbered and outmaneuvered, Razia and Altunia fled, but on October 14th, 1240, in Kaithal, Haryana, they were captured and brutally assassinated. Her short but absolutely earth-shattering reign came to a very violent end. But here is a really dark twist of historical irony. The very nobility that destroyed Razia, they didn't get a happy ending either. The Turkan-e-Chahalgani soon realized their new puppet, Bahram Shah, was a total nuisance, so they just murdered him too. But eventually, a ruthless dictator rose up from within their own ranks, a man named Balban. Knowing exactly how treacherous the group of 40 was, he systematically and violently wiped them out one by one. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to chew on. Razia Sultana broke every single rule of 13th century gender politics just to claim a seat at the table. Imagine for a second what administrative heights, what lasting reforms Hindustan could have reached if its greatest, most capable sultan hadn't spent her entire short reign fighting her own court just for the right to exist. Thank you so much for joining me, and keep questioning the history you think you know.